cuties, I'm Brittany with Stitches of Love Quilting, and in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this perfect little corner using your mini simple folded corner ruler. Now, I'm showing you how to use this ruler on the Hedgie block of the month because we do use this ruler to get perfect corners on every single applique block on this quilt. However, you can use this tutorial and the principle of how to use this ruler on any kind of project where you have those like fold and flip type corners. So let's get started. I'm going to give some quilt specific tips, and then I'm going to give tips that can apply to any project. So first up, what we're going to do, you have your block completed, your Hedgie block. This one I did on the embroidery machine. I pulled away all my stabilizer. Well, almost all of it. You'll pull out all of yours for your quilt. I cheated a little bit for the video and only pulled out the major parts. So then what you're gonna do is use your placement guide, and I like to use this 10.5-inch quick cut ruler from Lori Holt to trim my block. They come in a variety of sizes, and I've just over time found it easy to go on and pick up a ruler that matches any of the size blocks that I'm doing. If you don't have this ruler, you can just use a regular ruler and trim your block. So I recommend using your placement guide as a guide. We'll give you a little note of how far away your Hedgie should be from your outer trim line. And what I like to do when I'm trimming with this ruler is I actually put it on my placement guide, get it perfectly in place, and I'll do a little mark at like the top and bottom of my Hedgie and on the left and right. I just give myself a few guidelines. Then I move my placement guide aside, I put it on my block, and I trim it absolutely perfectly, okay? So your block, your applique block is ready to use. If you're doing another project, whatever base block that you're going to be putting the folded corners on, it might not even be a block, it might just be like a rectangle or a square that you're doing corners on. You just wanna have that trimmed and ready to go. So now this is the corner that we're going to make, and we're using this ruler. So first up, let's talk about how the ruler works. Now the ruler comes with lovely instructions. This is a Doug Lecco ruler to make sure you can see. I don't want to like show the instructions, I just want to like demonstrate that they're really nice. So in the instructions, you'll see that he gives a really nice image that tells you you're going to have a cutaway section. This is highlighted in white. So this inner part right here is going to be your cutaway. That's going to be used to cut away the corner of your base block. Then you have your trim section. This is this outer triangle part. This is going to be what we put on the corner after it's attached, and use that as a guideline to trim. Now, whatever size folded corner that you want to come out with, he gives you measurements of what lines to use on your ruler and what lines or what size square to cut. We, of course, have that in your pattern. So if you didn't look at this every time, you'd be just fine. But I do recommend you keep these instructions handy. So we are making, ultimately, the rest of the quilt that we're doing has half square triangles that trim at 2.5, meaning they finish at 2. So we're going for a 2-inch triangle. So we are going to follow that column in the pattern and his instructions to get the right size. So that means that we have 2 3.25-inch square squares cut. And what we're going to do, and this is in your pattern, of course. So what we're going to do, each square is going to yield 2 triangles for us to use. So we have 4 corners. That means we need 2 triangles. You can see I've already used my one set of triangles. And I'm going to now just trim this. So just grab any ruler and you're going to trim on the diagonal. I like to, for some reason, trim from the back. There's zero reason why. It's just a personal preference. So I am grabbing a ruler. I like to, when I'm trimming, have a ruler that has the diagonal lines so I know I'm perfect. And then I'm lined up point to point. And we're just simply giving this a trim. So again, 1 square is yielding us 2 triangles, right? So the next step that we're going to do, this is the triangle we're going to finish with. It's perfect and it's perfectly lined up. So our block is staying nice and even, and we have a perfect 10.5-inch finished block, or whatever size block you're making. This triangle we're going to talk about in a minute. I just did some pre-sewing, so I didn't have to come back and do it. So what we're going to do first is trim away our corner. So I like to mark the lines. So if you follow the little column in his instructions and use the instructions in the pattern that we give you if you're making the Hedgies, you are going to mark your 2.5-inch cutaway line. right? Then when it comes to trimming it, we're going to trim on this 2-inch line because we're finishing a 2-inch finished triangle. So I took a little bit of 3M transport tape and I just marked those 2 lines in reading my instructions. So now we're going to cut away, right? So that is our 2.5 inch. And as soon as I lay the ruler on the fabric, it's going to make total sense, right? So let me pull this where I know you can see it and I can reach to cut it. So we have the 2.5 inch. We're just going to line that line up on the edge of our fabric, and we're just going to go until this edge of our ruler is perfectly flat against the trimmed edge. So you can see the edge of the ruler is perfectly smooth, well, as long as I don't wiggle it. And we can see that this line right here is perfectly on the edge. So we're doing the 2.5 inch cutaway line is lined up with the edge of our block on a corner, and then the edge of the ruler is lined up on the other edge. So simply hold it in place, and we're going to trim away. Now this piece of fabric you don't need. When you're making this quilt, you end up with a lot of triangle scraps. I think they would make really cute mini half square triangles. You can turn them into pin cushions or a project bag. But in our family, no scrap is too small to save, so hopefully you're the same. Okay, so we've done that. Now what we need to do is attach one of our triangles, okay? So for the purpose of sewing this on, you're gonna use a 1/4 inch seam, right? Now, I like to mark with a sew line chalk pencil, or I like to mark my 1/4 inch with a, a Pigma pin, right? That's something that you can do. You can also, if you have your machine set up for a really nice, good 1/4 inch seam, then you don't have to mark anything, okay? It's just a personal preference if you mark your 1/4 inch seam. But we want to line this up center to center. So let's grab our little ironing board. And you, of course, will be at your station where you're not moving things around as much as me for a video. So let's just pull in our Steady Betty. And what we're going to do is fold a triangle in half along this long edge, point to point, and we're marking this center right here. And we're going to do the same for our other triangle. I mean, I'm only going to demonstrate one, but you would do this on all 4 triangles. It's 2 squares that made 4 triangles, remember. And then we want to know where we're going to mark. We need a center mark here. So all you do is you have your smooth line, and we are going to fold our block where it is edge to edge. Let me make sure you can see that nicely. So I folded the block and the 2 edges are meeting, and this is smooth right here and matching, and we're going to mark that center point. There we go. So now that's all the pressing you have to do at the moment. There we go. So now you know where to line these up. Now, I do not have pins over here, but I highly recommend pinning. So what you'll do is you will pin and match center point to center point. Now, I use 3 pins. It's just a personal preference. I put 1 right here in the center, and then I did 1 on either side. And then you are going to sew just a simple 1/4 inch seam right there. So easy, right? Nothing complicated. So with the power of camera, you can see that I've done that. Now, I did mark my 1/4 inch seam with a really dark pen just so you could see that in this video. So I have sewn a 1/4 inch seam, sew it in whatever fabric or whatever thread color you're piecing with. In this case, my machine had white on it, so I'm doing that. Sometimes when I'm piecing, I use white, ecru, beige, whatever kind of, gray, just whatever you want to piece with. And so I've done my 1/4 inch seam. So now we're ready to press a little point again. So move your little Steady Betty back into view. And now we're going to, of course, set our seam. You always want to set your seam before you press out. And we're going to press the seam towards the triangle. So all we're going to do is just flip over and then press this. There we go. So you can see we're using the oversized method, right? So you can see, look at this. It's all kinds of wonky hanging off the edge. What are we going to do? Well, that's where the other line comes into play on the ruler. So remember this trim line? This is what we're going to put on the corner of the block. Now I turn it towards myself so I can trim. Where'd my rotary go? Here it is. Need that. And so we're simply going to take our 2 inch trim line and we are going to line it up so that it is at that seam, that intersection of our triangle and our background fabric. And you will see when you do that, the edge of your ruler is perfectly smooth here and perfectly smooth here. So you're ready to trim your corner. Now this is so easy. I think people get scared when they're like, oh my gosh, there's so many lines on the ruler or what have you. But that's it. That's all you have to do. So the number one tip that I would give you is mark your lines so you don't have to think again. Now, if you're going to use this on a multiple projects, then maybe just remark every time. Don't leave your tape for a really long time because you don't want any residue depending on the kind of tape. You can also use a cute washi tape. So again, for the purposes of the Hedgie quilt, we're doing a 2-inch finished triangle, which means I marked a 2.5-inch cutaway and a 2-inch trim. Now, everything is in the pattern for you. You just read through the steps. But I do highly recommend that you get this ruler for a variety of projects. I find it so simple. And I've actually found myself, a lot of pattern writers will tell you to put, 1.25-inch square on the corner and fold it up. And you're trying to say, it's making me think of, I made a cat quilt for my husband that had little cat ears. Well, no matter how much I starched, no matter how perfect my seam allowance was, I did end up with some blunted cat ears, and it made me bummed because I was doing all my best practices. So if I were to make that quilt again, what I would do is say, okay, what size triangle am I ending up with? Oh, I'm using a 1.5-inch square. So I'm finishing with, take out your seam allowance, a 1-inch folded corner, and you can apply that. Now this is the mini ruler. So you're going to go up to, what is our biggest size? 3.5-inch. So a 3-inch finished triangle is the max size for this little mini. Doug Lecco does have a much larger one that goes to, 12, 14 inches. You'll have to check, but it's a much larger corner ruler. Don't quote me on the size it finishes at, but it's much larger and you can do much larger blocks with it. So I hope that you found this tutorial simple and easy. It really is a piece of cake. So again, if you are doing this, you're going to end up with absolutely perfect blocks. Now, when you go to assemble this quilt, that makes your life so much easier. When you're doing the version without this ruler and you just put a square in the corner, sew on the diagonal, flip it up, you're never going to have just like those perfect lines. So you're kind of always kind of adjusting in your seam allowance to make sure your blocks are square, and that's difficult. This ruler makes everything so accurate. So I hope you liked this super quick tutorial meant for the Hedgies, but again, you can apply it to any project. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to comment on the video, or you can always reach out to us at stitchesoflovequilting.com. Click on support and submit a ticket. Our team is happy to help answer any questions. And if they don't know the answer right away, they come and get myself or Julie and we answer for you. So I hope you again enjoyed this tutorial. Like and subscribe if you do, and we look forward to sewing with you. Happy stitching.